Namaskar. Welcome to this new session. We are dealing with Vairagya, uh, and last time I told you about the various ways of Vairagya, kinds of Vairagya, such as Ichha Vighatavad, Ichha Vyapakatva, etc. In Ichha Vyapakatva, you see, we have to understand the psychodynamics of our thirst and manifestation of the thirst and the passion havoc. And see our lifestyle today that we have opted for. We have concept called apartment as against joint family system. And then if you look at the social stages that our society went through, in India we had what was called as Vada culture. Vada culture means it was many families would be staying in one kind of building, and therefore the connectivity between the families was also there. Today we have concept of neighbor where we really perhaps do not know who is our neighbor. We have this apartment culture that has come up in our times. This is encouraging our ragatmakata. It's apartment. Apartment means we are cutting off ourselves from people around us. Now, this is not good because this gives a kind of encourages licentiate conditions, libertine conditions. Now, that is not good for Vairagya sadhana because the very term apartment says that it has that meaning, and of course, it is that way that we have in our social conditions today. We have apartment culture. Means to be apart from other people. If you are apart from other people, you become libertine. If you become libertine, then you become licentiate. If you become licentiate, then the Vairagya sadhana is discouraged. Then we have concept of bedroom. Now the bedroom is not just that where we go for bed. Because when we go to our bedroom, for no reason we have this culture of locking our bedroom. And then somebody should knock your bedroom. What does it mean? That you want to be in complete liberty, libertine. It's not freedom. It is not freedom, it is not liberty, it is to be libertine. And we are encouraging that kind of thing in our present social conditions. That if you are in your bedroom, you will be locking your bedroom. You will be closing the door. And you expect someone to knock your door and not just enter your bedroom. So, the very idea of bedroom, what is practiced in bedroom is totally different than just going to bed as the nomenclature suggests. So this bedroom culture, apartment culture are discouraging any Vairagya sadhana or any Vairagya intent or process. In joint family system, we never had bedrooms for each one. There was no concept of knocking the door. Like we have the concept of locking the door before you enter the bedroom, you have to knock the door. And you close your door when you enter the bedroom. Why should you close your door when you enter the bedroom? What is it that you want to do by closing the door? So closed door practices are encouraged in concept of bedroom, personal bedroom, then apartment. So closed door culture is not good for human psyche development or psychic developments. So in Ichha Vyapakatva, we open out the doors, we open out the boundaries. When you open out the boundaries, you will be more inclined to be more decent. So let's understand the meaning of Vairag at this stage. It is just to be in decencies. And then, of course, decency is a flexible framework. If you are decent, you can become more decent. If you are more decent, you can become more and more decent, and then more and more and more decent. So, present culture is discouraging the decencies with the concept of one's house means it is apartment. And then one's personal space, this concept of personal space. Yes, personal space is good if it is only for liberty and freedom. But if the personal space is encouraging libertine nature, that is not really good for human development. And we are embracing that today wholeheartedly with complete social sanction and justification for it. That you must have your private space. Why for? What are you going to do in your private space? All that you do in private space, find out how much you are getting into the gravities of licentious nature, libertine nature. So it's not just that you are going for liberty, you want to be libertine. So understand how much discouraging is our present setup for Vairagya. In the sense, just decency, to be decent. So this point was to be brought to notice. Now, in Vairagya, we are told about the process of it has certain descriptions given by the ancient wisdom. One of those is Vishaya Dosha Darshanam. Now, what is this Vishaya Dosha Darshanam? So let's consider the Vishaya Dosha Darshanam. So you see, Vairagya must be developed out of it. It is not that you develop detest for objects, dislike for objects or hate for object, and the fact that you cannot be really enjoying the objects because of your conditions, your age, etc. So we'll be having prejudices. Suppose a very old person will have prejudices for certain things, that he cannot be enjoying the life like a young person or prime age person is able to enjoy the life. And therefore they have a defective vision of the objects. It is a negative aspect to look at the objects negativistically. So it is not suggested that one should look at the objects negativistically. Now what is this Vishaya Dosha Darshanam? See, it is the philosophical process of identifying defects in objects. When we find defects in objects, we are critical about the object. Suppose you don't like an object, you will be critical about it. And now suppose you no longer can consume an object, then you will be again negatively critical about it. Like a diabetic patient might be critically looking at sweet things. And usually that happens. because of very strong diabetes, the person cannot eat sweet meats, and therefore there are prejudices, there are biases, and there is a negativistic kind of rejection. Now we have emotional Vishaya dosha darshanam. We cite the defects in objects with some emotional gravity, emotional gravity of dislike, detest, hatred, or inability to consume the pleasure. Like we cannot, when you cannot be taking the pleasure, you start criticizing that object. The reason to criticize the object or to be critical about the object is that you can't really take it. It is your inability to take it. And therefore, you start developing negativistic view. But that is not the Vishaya dosha darshana in a philosophical frame of mind. So, what is suggested here is Vishaya dosha darshanam is citing defects in objects philosophically. So, what are these defects in objects? The first defect is that the buddhi starts getting deluded by such objects. The buddhi is eclipsed, and then it is cast as there's casting a spell of delusion. And of course, these objects have that capacity to delude you. The objects have enticements. These objects have enticements. And then when they entice you, they really make you slave. They make you slave. So you become slave of those objects. And that is one defect in these objects. The sensory objects can cast a spell on your senses, your mind, your buddhi. So that is the dosha. That is the defect. That objects can make you slave. So they will make senses slaves, they will make the mind a slave, they will make the buddhi also a slave. And then we are caught in irresistible kind of greed or desire or liking for the object, and we really cannot get out of that gravity. So that is the Vishaya dosha darshanam. Then when the buddhi becomes slave, we will be hunting for those objects. The objects don't have to come in your presence. We will be hunting for those objects. Once we are enticed by those objects. And then we have these enticement for objects which are actually anitya, which are impermanent, which are ashashvata, which are anatmaka, which are papatmaka, which are ashuchatmaka. And still we have enticement for these things. And then we realize that bhogas are some kind of certain bhogas are such that they are pleasure giving in the beginning and then pain giving later, or pain giving in the beginning and then pleasure giving later, etc. So we are caught in the effects as well as the consumption of it. We take the objects because we are deluded, and we take the objects, and then sometimes the object, if it is not delusive, the effects are delusive, therefore we go for those objects again. Like drug addicts, it is not that drug that the addicted people consume is not that it is very tasty and it is very relishing, but the effect of the drug deludes them. Otherwise, it is not a delicacy. A drug is not a delicacy to be consumed. But the effects of the drugs have tremendous gravity to delude a person. And therefore, we will be going towards more and more materialistic lifestyle. The Vishaya Dosha Darshana makes us more and more sensual, and then more and more worldly, more and more mundane. So philosopher has this kind of consideration, who is trying to go for spiritual emancipation and going for that spiritual samam bonam, cites these defects, that the more I would get into the gravity of these objects, the more I will be weaned away from my goal in life, which is spiritual samam bonam and spiritual wisdom. And that is why he cites defects. See, this is totally different than one who is prejudiced and then trying to cite defects in the objects. So that is negativistic approach, and in philosophy that is not there. Then the other defect is that these objects, sensory objects, have tremendous potentials to arrest you in kleshas such as attachment and aversion. So they reinforce attachment, aversion. The sensory objects will reinforce the kleshas which are of the nature of kama, lobha and moha, or raga and dvesha. And both the raga and dvesha are both going to be quite fatalistic in spiritual pursuit. They are monstrous spoilers, and therefore in philosophical approach this is cited, that the object has such kind of radiations and has such potentials, and therefore in philosophical channel one is a little afraid of going for these consumption of sensory objects or going after these sensory objects. So that is another defect. Now we will be citing the next defect. Getting caught in raga dvesha means we are getting caught in the wheel of karma. And then this wheel of karma is dreadening to philosophically inclined person. The wheel of karma, that is karma, karma phala, again karma, karma phala, karma, karma phala, or karma, karma vasana, karma phala, karma vasana, karma. So this is a wheel which is really dreadening. So raga dvesha or the raga lobha, these are going to keep us more and more in the gravity of the wheel of karma, and they would be rotating us in the karma chakra, in the wheel of karma. So this rotation is also dreadening to philosopher. So although it might be immediately pleasure giving, yet a philosophically disposed person will be little conservative, or will be little inhibited to go for consumption of pleasures, because effectively it is minding. Now see, on one hand we saw those who are addicted to taking pleasures. So pleasure addiction, while taking it, it may not be a pleasure. Like the drug addicts, the taste of the drug is not really bewitching, but the effect that it engenders is more bewitching. And because of the effects, one goes for those pleasures, such as addiction to drugs. Now, here, because of effects, one is weaned away from going for those pleasures. The effect is karma chakra, the wheel of karma, and that is dreadening. It is dreadening because karma vasanas will be nourished. So, understand how the Vishaya Dosha Darshana is taken into consideration in philosophy. So that is what the Vishaya Dosha Darshanam is, and therefore philosophically bent disposed person will be little on the back foot while going for such consumptions. And therefore, philosophically disposed person will be looking for uparati. And it's a very interesting term which comes in Sankhya philosophy, uparati. That means I have consumed enough pleasures. Now enough of pleasures. It is not that you should be depriving you of your of pleasures. Uparati means it is feeling enough. So the gratification has taken place sufficiently. It is more than enough that the gratification has taken place, and therefore it is right that now I should be weaned away. And this is actually a very handy kind of precept, because aging is going to catch up with us. And therefore, if you do not really get prepared in this respect, then old age is a problem. Old age is a problem. And therefore, somewhere we must get contented with our materialistic life. So it is not to just do away with materialistic life. You must look at it in this way. Yes, I have had sufficient. I have had sufficient gratification. Enough of it. Because if you don't say that it is enough of it, then you will be indiscreet, and then old age will catch up with you, or you will catch up with your aging, and then you will have difficulties in gratification. Then you will have a bitterness in your mind that I cannot be taking, therefore I don't take it. This is helplessness. This is haplessness, hopelessness, helplessness. This is not good for mind. Somewhere you must have this contentment, satiety, satisfaction in having had your materialistic lifestyle for whatever years. Particularly in a young age, you can't expect someone to be not at all materialistic. That's quite natural in that stage of life. But somewhere you must have this uparati. Uparati. That means now taking a back foot, stepping backwards, just because you feel that you have taken enough of pleasures. And you must really have this kind of restraint. If you don't have this restraint coming naturally and also supported by logic and reasoning, etc., intellectual rationality, etc., then it will be difficult for you to put up with the condition that is going to come in old age. So, this was really addenda to last session. Now today, in today's session, we are going to look at Vairagya that we must construe rather than be in popular notion of it that it is something, renounce, 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 give up, and deprive you of all pleasures. Let's try to look at Bhagavad Gita. In Bhagavad Gita, almost in each chapter, there is mention of Vairagya in some form or the other. So we'll come to know various characteristics of Vairagya. It is not just give up and renounce and have a dispassion in life or dispassionately living the life with no passion, with no thirst whatsoever, thirstlessness. As I said some times back, that is removing the springs of life. You must have thirst in life for something. And then when you are more reformed, you must know that you have thirst for right things, you have thirst for righteous things, you have thirst for higher things. Like the precept, param društva nivartante. It is not to be thirstless everywhere and anywhere. So that will be melancholy in life. So, as I've been repeatedly telling you, it is nowhere putting on what you call outfit of melancholy over the mind. So, Vairagya is totally a different concept when it comes in philosophy. And Bhagavad Gita will tell us much more about it. So therefore, we'll be going through mention of Vairagya that has come. There is no negative Vairagya advocated in Bhagavad Gita at all. It's all positive Vairagya, not at all negative Vairagya. Not out of, defeated mind. Usually Vairagya is embraced by defeated minds. When you are defeated in your life, you take recourse to Vairagya. Bhagavad Gita doesn't suggest. So, let's look into Bhagavad Gita. There is no fleeing from the world. Bhagavad Gita doesn't advocate fleeing from the world as some other religions. Ascetic religions advocate that. You must run away from life. You must get on to top of Himalayas. You must get away from the social bustle and run away from here. Go into forests, go onto mountain tops. So about Vairagya, the second chapter in the 59th verse has a very important statement. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehinah rasavarjam raso apyasya param društva nivartate. Very, very powerful statement right at the beginning in the second chapter. So, if you are only stampeding the sensory tendencies by aviveka, out of madness, then what happens? The Vishayas will go away from you. You will be going away from objects. But in the inner mind, there will be constant bubbles of desires. And therefore, such a restraint is not advisable. In your mind, you have raga, lobha, etc. You have attachment, aversion, etc. So, that Vairagya is a pseudo Vairagya. Having attachment, aversion in the mind, having raga, lobha in the mind, having likes and dislikes in the mind, crowd of likes and dislikes, pulls of likes and dislikes, the powers and forces of likes and dislikes, then the Vairagya is forced and forceful, and that is not proper. So therefore, as I said in the other session, last session, Vishaya Vitrushna should be replaced by Tattva Trushna. Vishaya Trushna should be replaced by Tattva Trushna. The thirst for objects should be replaced by thirst for principles. Higher thirst should come in, and if the higher thirst comes up, lower thirst goes away. Without that, the Vairagya is going to be pseudo Vairagya. It is going to be deceiving Vairagya. And Vairagya has been defined in the 13th chapter. Indriyartheshu Vairagyam Anahankara Evacha Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi Dukkha Doshanu Darshanam. Indriyartheshu Vairagyam. One must have Vairagya for Indriyarthas, objects of senses. So these are Shabda Sparsha Rupa Rasa Gandha, and just now we have seen that they have tremendous potentials to keep us bound, arrested to karma bandha. And one must be aware of one's own embodiment. Now, why are we getting thirst? We are getting thirst because we are an embodiment by ourselves. We are not disembodied beings, we are embodied beings. And because of this body that we have, this raga is coming up. Now, what is this body? We have to look at this body in right sense of the term as to what the body is. The body has Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi, Dukkha. So this is the dosha darshanam that we have to take. After all, this body is subject to birth and death and decay, and then it is subject to diseases. It is subjected to sorrows, all kinds of pains and sorrows. So it is basically we are bound to body, and therefore we are bound to objects. And therefore one must develop Asakti Anabhishvanga Putradara Grahadishu Nityam cha Samachittattvam Ishtanishtopapatishu. So we are caught in all these dynamics of life, we have asakti, we have attachment and this likes and dislikes, we have attachment to our people, our house, our kith and kin, then our house, etc., then the things in our house. This attachment is creating all problems. Therefore, we need to develop viveka, ishta anishta upapatti. What is ishta, what is anishta? So we need to develop viveka. Viveka sadhana should be there. So with viveka sadhana, we will not be having indiscrimination. It is by indiscrimination that we indulge. And therefore, we must encourage discrimination. So that's again important precept that comes from Bhagavad Gita. We have to identify what is desirable in the life, what is undesirable in the life, essentially, not sensationally. Then we will be quite discreet in our conduct of life. Then we need to develop particular nature to be really taking up Vairagya, assimilating Vairagya. Without that mindset really cultured, there is no point in just refraining oneself from sensory consumptions. So basically we need to develop a nature in mind, which will show you a facet of Vairagya. One who is in true Vairagya, proper Vairagya, justifiable Vairagya, then how is that person? When the person receives some pains, still the person is not agitated. Now, this is not our case, common man's case. When we have troublesome condition, when we are sorrowed, we are agitated. So we have to develop that nature in mind, that we are not agitated, irritated, aspirated by dukkha prapti, by getting pains in our life, which come in our way. Pains come in our life. So we should be anudvigna. And when we get pleasures, we should not have spruha. We should not have thirst. So we must be free from this, because our life is nothing but incoming of pains and pleasures. When the pain is incoming, we are agitated. When the pleasure is incoming, we have more and more thirst for it. We start developing attachment, we start developing greed, expectant condition. So that should not be there. Spruha should not be coming in when the sukha is coming in our way. So also we should be free from certain emotions such as priti, bhaya, krodha. The more we are vulnerable to priti, bhaya, krodha, then we have inherent imbalance in the mind. If there is inherent imbalance in the mind, it will not be suitable for vairagya sadhana. So we have to see that our mind is not getting impacted, or is not disinsulated to such conditions in life. Priti, bhaya, krodha, they should be mitigated to great extent. Otherwise, vairagya will be pseudo vairagya. You can't come across a person who has lot of priti, lot of bhaya, lot of krodha, but then practicing vairagya. Impossible. It is not possible to have vairagya. So there should be attachment, aversion should be minimized. So if you want to really inculcate vairagya, see that you take steps on this front, that you start minimizing your attachment and aversions. In other words, there is that sthita prajna darshanam which comes in 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So that nature must be imbibed, inculcated, or at least inscribed on our minds, that this is what we must be going for. Sthita prajna darshana, which comes in 2nd chapter, verses 56, 57 and 58. What is the description of Sthita Prajna? When there are sorrows, in the mind, one is not sorrowed. Sorrows will come your way, but you should not be sorrowed. So despite the sorrows, one is not sorrowed. When one has pleasures and delights, one doesn't have spruha. So his mind is steadfast. His mind is steadfast, whether it is pain coming his way or pleasures coming in his way. They don't create bubble and rufflings. That is called sthira buddhi, and that is sthita prajna. One who is without attachment everywhere and anywhere, and who really doesn't bother about something auspicious happening or inauspicious happening. When otherwise for us, when auspicious happens, we are delighted, we are happy, we are excited. When inauspicious happens, we are sorrowed. So one who is not really bothered about it, whether the things which are happening are auspicious or inauspicious, shubha, shubha, he is neither delighted, elated, nor sorrowed. Neither has attachment nor aversion. That is sthira buddhi. Like a turtle draws all the senses under its shell, this sthiramati or sthita prajna draws all the senses under the shell. Not that he savages the senses, but he draws in. He is called Sthita Prajna. So these are wonderful descriptions which come in Sthita Prajna Darshana of Bhagavad Gita, second chapter, verse 56, 57, 58. And again, one who is in this Vairagya, genuine Vairagya, he is described with a verse. Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmanye vatmana tushtaha sthita pragna taduchyate. This is the 55th verse of second chapter. Again, this is part of the Sthita Prajna Darshana. Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmanye vatmana tushtaha sthita pragna taduchyate. All the kamana, ichchas, mundane desires, etc. are totally set aside. And he is contented within himself. So there is no discontent in classical Vairagya, which is there in pseudo Vairagya. One is discontented because happiness cannot be taken, delights cannot be taken, gratification cannot be encouraged. So there is sorrow, there is sadness. Here one is contented within oneself, and there is contentment locus within oneself. Atmanye vatmana tushtaha. You can have tushti. Tushti is to have contentment within oneself. The self has contentment within the self. This is how actually the property of the self is. It is not just a self. It has a property to be contented within itself. And when this is not identified, then we look for contentment from something outside us. Money, glories, enjoyments, pleasures, delights, objects. So, this is the characteristic of the self. Self is not just the self. Self means it has properties to be contented within itself. And one who has this actualized, he is also Sthita Prajna. So here, let's consider some equations. We think Vairagya is Nivrutti or Nivrutti Dharma, and Karma Yoga is Pravrutti Dharma. Because Karma Yoga is one of the yogas. And Karma Yoga means you think the person is keeping engaged in worldly activities. He doesn't have cessation from worldly activities. This is what is view of common man. Karma Yoga means one is doing, continuing to be doing one's activities, activities of business, of life. Now Vairagya is said to be Nivrutti. And then Karma Yoga is said to be Pravrutti. So there can be a confusion here. How then Karma Yoga has Vairagya in it? But Bhagavad Gita in its precept on Karma Yoga tells us that he is Vairagya incarnate who can be a Karma Yogi. He is not keeping engaged with the worldly activities like you and me engaged with worldly activities. We have passion, we have thirst, we have wants, we have necessities. We are having expectant conditions. That is not the condition of Karma Yogi. So in Karma Yogi there is a wonderful constitution of Vairagya. Vairagya comes in best possible way for one to be in Karma Yoga. He has that Shanta Chitta. He doesn't have the waves on his mind like we have waves of pains and pleasures on our minds. He doesn't have it. He is Asakta. The third chapter. Tasmat asaktaha satatam karyam karma samachara. Krishna says you must keep keeping yourself engaged in karma. Satatam karyam karma samachara. Satatam karma. constant. But how? Asaktaha, with asakti, with not asakti, asakti, that you must have no thirst. And without thirst, you must be keeping yourself engaged. That is the mantra of Karma Yoga. So Karma Yogi is keeping engaged in activities of life, but with asakti, anasakti. And then he says, asakto hi acharan karma paramapnoti purushaha. Third chapter, 19th verse. With asakti, that is with anasakti, one keeping engaged in karmas will attain the supreme. So that's how it comes in third chapter. So also there are certain verses which come in the third chapter, which again. So the 39th verse is like this. Avrutam jnanametena jnanino nitya vairina kamarupena kaunteya dushpurena analena cha. He says, Arjuna, knowledge is covered by this eternal enemy of the wise people. That is Kama. And it is insatiable fire in the form of desires. And therefore, he is dreaded of that. Then Indriyani Manobuddhir Asya Adhishthanam Uchyate Etaih Vimohayatyesha Gnana Avrutya Dehinam. The senses, the mind, the intellect are said to be its seat. Seat of what? Kama. The seat of Kama are senses, mind and intellect. And the knowledge through all that which is in the form of desires. And that dilutes the embodied self. So this Kama, which is residing in these loci, will be deluding the embodied self. Tasmat tvam indriyanyadau niyamya bharatarshabha. Therefore, Arjuna, you should restrain your senses. Papmanam prajahihena jnana vijnana nashanam. Because the sensory gravities have the potentials to really eclipse your intelligence, and they will destroy your jnana vijnana. They will eclipse your wisdom, and therefore beware of this. Indriyani paranyahur indriyebhya param manaha manasastu para buddhir yo buddhe parasastu sa. This is the gradation. The senses are said to be greater than the body, and greater than them, greater than the senses is the mind, greater than the mind is intellect, and greater than that intellect is the self. Therefore, how we must have priorities is instructed in this particular verse of Bhagavad Gita. Evam buddhe param buddhva samstabhyatman atmana jahi shatrum mahabaho kamarupam durasam sadam. Thus Arjuna, knowing that which is higher than the intellect and subduing the mind by reason, you should slay this enemy in the form of desire that is hard to overcome. So the third chapter again comes to mention the Vairagya. So this how the third chapter is also praising Vairagya. Now let's proceed to understand the Bhagavad Gita quotations, Bhagavad Gita mentions on this Vairagya. But this we will take up in our next session. So enough for time being. Namaskar all of you.